Today we'll have an introduction about UV maps. What is an UV map? You can think about it as a texture coordinates. It's a map which tells which parts of the 3D model are covered by a given texture. The process in which a UV map is generated is called UV unwrapping. UV unwrapping is the process of taking a 3D model and slicing it open in a plane using its geometry. Then we can use it with textures, and the object will take that texture and display it correctly on the 3D model. UV unwrapping comes after you made your 3D model. Note that after you made a UV map, modeling again can destroy the UV map. There are ways in which you can continue modeling without messing the UV map, but they are a little more restrictive. It's always best to UV unwrap after you finish the modeling process. Let's now see an example so we can understand it better. Here we have a simple cube. Let's say we want to texture it with some numbers. We want each face to be numbered differently. The cube primitive from Blender already comes with a pre-built UV map. Let's switch our workplace to the UV editor so we can see it. You can see some squares here. This is the cube UV map, already unwrapped. I'll be starting to paint the numbers around the cube. Notice what happens in the UV map. You can see that the orientation for this UV map isn't up. Depending on how you are texturing your 3D model, this can become a problem. As an example, if we wanted to paint directly on the texture image, we'll have issues with the orientation of our 3D model. Let's rotate the UV map to fix this and repaint our numbers. Also notice what is happening in the 3D viewport as we rotate the UV map. Notice that now the numbers are aligned as we want. So this is a UV map, the map that tells which parts of the texture will go in which parts of the 3D model. Note that it's the same geometry from the 3D model. If we made a cut on the cube, we'll see it right away on the UV map. Now let's see Suzanne as another UV map example case. Just like the cube, Suzanne comes with a pre-built UV map. Here's how the UV map is set. Now, notice there are 3 sections in the UV map. We call these pieces inside an UV map UV islands. The less islands you have, the better, because you need a margin around each island to not bleed pixels to another island from the texture image. And this also reduces the space you have to texture a model. The space between islands usually depends on the resolution of your texture. The smaller the resolution of your texture, the bigger the margin between UV islands are required. When we are using UV map, usually you want to occupy all the space you can inside the square. Something to be aware when you are using UV maps is the density of the UV map. The size of the islands controls the resolution it requires. You have a limited space with UV maps and you can choose what you want, more or less resolution, just by scaling the islands. This is especially important with game assets. Texture size is quite important as it impacts performance a lot. Depending on what you are working, you may want resolution in specific areas. If this was a human model, there would be a higher priority for the high resolution to be near his face, and less around the back of the head and its ears. This of course depends on the 3D model you are texturing. As an example, this happens if you don't consider text resolution when dealing with UV maps. As you can see, the UV map is too small, meaning it's going to use fewer pixels from the texture image. and the contrast difference from this 2 pixel density creates this weird effect. With UV maps, you usually want to avoid overlapping UVs. In some specific situations, you can use them to your benefit to reduce texture space. Now, there are various ways to generate UV maps from 3D meshes, and that depends on the geometry of your mesh as well. The best UV unwraps usually depends on the type of the model you have. If you have an organic model, then most likely you'll be using customized seams to UV unwrap your mesh. However, if your mesh is more like a square form, then you can safely use the cube projection. And later you can also add the UV maps like stitching together the islands. Usually it doesn't matter how a UV map is generated. What matters is that the UV map will present the least distortion as possible to the texture image applied to the 3D model. Now, if you are working with Blender to create only static renders or animations, then UV unwrapping process can be skipped entirely. By using other texture coordinates on your materials, you can still apply textures without having to UV unwrap. However, for game assets, it is the conventional way of texturing 3D models, due to performance requirements. We will be making 3D models from scratch and UV unwrapping them as part of the process to create the 3D assets, so we'll explore the different ways you can unwrap models in different videos. For now, I hope this video gave you a better idea of what UV maps are and how important they are for texturing. If you enjoyed this video, give a like, and if you want to see more of it, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't lose a new video. I thank you for watching and see you on the next one. Bye!